Welcome back. Let's invite the first corporate on the show, CenturyPly Boards. The company has posted its best ever quarterly sales, EBITDA and profit in absolute terms in Q4. Revenues have gone up by 7.1%. Some margin contraction. EBITDA margins have come in at 17% versus 17.8% in the comparable quarter of last year. But despite that, the profits have gone up by nearly 30%. We're now joined by the company's Executive Director, Keshav Bhajanka, to take some questions. Keshav, thank you very much for joining in. I want to start with your plywood segment because that's a bulk of your business. I think close to about 60% of your revenues comes in from plywood. Now here, two-part question. One, what is the outlook on the volume growth? Any guidance for FY24? Because on a high base, you've managed to sustain strong volumes even in Q4 and for the full year. So FY24 volume growth for plywood. And secondly, I think for plywood, on the margin front, you've missed your guidance for the full year. You had guided for a 12 to 14% EBITDA margins, but you've ended with 10.8%. So can you talk a bit about the margin contraction that we've seen?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on the show. Well, you see, in plywood, you're right. It is the largest segment that we have. And plywood has shown very robust growth over the course of the last 2 years. We're very bullish that even in this year, we'll have double-digit revenue growth. So that is the target. That has been the objective. And we are very confident that we'll be able to achieve the same. In plywood, there was an exceptional item, which was the write-off of our Myanmar subsidiary. If you treat that as an exceptional item and look at EBITDA margins without the same, we would actually be in line with our guidance. So I think that one-off has led to margins showing on the lower side.
Give us then the FY24 margin, volume and margin guidance for each of your segments, plywood, MDF, laminate and particle board.
So for plywood, we'll definitely be looking at a double-digit revenue growth. The breakup between volume and revenue right now is a little skewed because there have been some price increases as recently as Q4, but definitely we're looking at a double digit in terms of revenue growth. For laminates, we'll be looking well in excess of 20% because there are a number of initiatives we have taken. For instance, we have launched Scenic laminates earlier this month. As you know, that Scenic plywood has really aided in our volume growth in plywood. So we are quite confident that Scenic laminates is going to be a very strong contributor for our laminate segment as well. In MDF, we have done a substantial capex, which has come into effect from March. And till now, our limitation was that we are running at optimum capacity. So with this capacity addition, we are very confident that we'll be looking at 25% plus growth. In terms of EBITDA margins, for laminates, we would be continuing to look at 14 to 16% EBITDA margins over the course of the year. Short term, there could be some headwinds because of the launch of a new product category. But for the year, we are still looking at 14 to 16%. For plywood, we are looking at a 13 to 15% for the year. And for MDF, we would be looking at anywhere between 20 to 25% EBITDA margins.
Okay, so that's some of the numbers. Just to understand, the margin profile, Keshav, that you're speaking of, is that going to be a function of just bigger volumes? Because there's a lot of capacity you've added and are adding. I think plywood, you've commissioned a brownfield capacity, if I'm not mistaken, in March. There's a greenfield capacity coming up as well, I think in Andhra Pradesh. So basically, in terms of volumes, what's going to be the volume kicker with all this capacity coming in? And what's your outlook on pricing and the possibility of price hikes ahead?
So the capacity that you're talking about, the brownfield capacity that was added in March was actually for MDF. And even the Andhra capacity is for MDF, which will commence from March of next year onwards. It is not for plywood. With this new capacity addition, we are definitely going to look at a 25% plus volume growth in MDF, like I've already mentioned. And in terms of price hikes, due to a certain amount of pressure from imports, we're not looking at any price hikes at the moment. I think in MDF, that is the reason why margins aren't going to be looking at the higher side because raw material costs have shot up. But we are looking to maintain margins because of the additional volume and economies of scale that come with that. So I think overall, net, the increase in volumes is going to aid us in maintaining margins, but raw material pressure does exist.
That's on MDF and an outlook on the plywood segment as well? Specifically, what pricing trends are looking like there?
In plywood, we have taken a price hike as recently as last quarter. And as you know, timber prices affect both MDF and plywood. So in plywood, again, we have been impacted by timber price increases, but other costs such as chemical costs have softened. So this has helped us to look at blended margins within our guided figures. I think going forward, we are going to maintain our margin profile. And as and when raw material price hikes do take place, we will be looking at price increases in the plywood segment.
Okay, got that. Keshav, thanks for joining us. This is Pavitra. I remember you mentioning the timber prices last time as well, and you had taken a 2% price hike on account of that. There hasn't been anything since then on the plywood segment hike, right?
No. Since last quarter, there's been no hike.
Okay, got that. And also, can you take us through what the market share looks like here? I think last we spoke, it was around 6%.
I think we have definitely increased in terms of market share. If you look at the plywood segment, we are at 2,000 crores, and in terms of turnover for last year, whereas the overall market would be anywhere between 20 to 25,000 crores. So I think our overall market share has gone up from 6% to well in excess of 7%, and I think this trend is likely to continue. We are bullish that we'll gain further market share going forward.
A little bit more about MDF, because the volume pressure continues for MDF. Even in Q3, I think volumes have declined. Even in Q4, I can see that the MDF volumes are down nearly 3% year on year. For the full year as well, it's just a marginal, 4% kind of volume growth. Can you tell us what's leading to this? Will this volume decline in the MDF segment continue?
Definitely not. We were limited by capacity, as I mentioned.
You said that.
So we've been running at optimum capacity for 2 years now. And through minor improvements, we've been able to increase the quantum of production slightly. But now with the new capacity coming in, you will definitely see this trend reversing. We'll be able to produce more, and we're very confident that overall volumes will improve substantially.
What's the increase in the capacity in MDF because of the Hoshaipur facility, which has already commenced commercial operations? What could be the volume growth that you're targeting then?
Our overall capacity has gone up by close to 60%. We have gone up from 600 cubic meters per day to 950 cubic meters per day. And we are very confident that we'll be able to achieve at least a 25% growth in overall volumes, if not more.
Okay, Keshav, we will leave it on that note for today. Thank you very much for joining in. Appreciate you giving us all of the details there on the outlook for FY24. That is CenturyPly. And with that, we get back to the market.